Okay, awesome. Well, welcome everyone. So today we're going to do a little bit of a walkthrough of how you can add resources into the resource library and add resources to project pages and resource packs in the resource hub. So first things first, maybe what I'll do is I'll just ask you, are you all able to log into the WordPress website and see the back end of everything? Yeah.
We are able to log in. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So I know that you have different settings than I do. You were all set up as resource managers. So I will have a few additional options compared to you when I'm showing you through the screen. So if at any time it turns out that you don't have what it is that I'm talking about, then let me know and I'll make sure that that gets added to the resource manager role. So there's a few things that you don't have access to, like you can't add a member or change settings on a member. You can't send an email out, things like that. But you should be able to take care of the basics. So I'm just going to share my screen now and we'll get rolling. Okay, awesome. So right now, I assume you can see the back end of WordPress and I am on a project page. Yes? Yep. Okay, I see some nodding heads. Awesome. Okay. So this is the back end of the WordPress. The sections that are most important for you as resource managers will be the projects section, which is where all the individual projects will be added into the system, and resource packs here, which is the curated packs of resources that are on particular themes, but could be covering resources from multiple projects. The other area that you're going to spend some time in likely is Formidable under the entries section. And the other piece that I wanted to show you is documentation. We don't have a lot of documentation up here now, and mine happens to be at the top of my screen for some reason. I don't really know. But there's a few items in here that are and hopefully we'll add a few in here that just talk about how to do various things in the back end of the website. So if as resource managers, you want to have something to refer to that you think will be helpful for other folks, then feel free to create documentation. And can you all see the add new and the manage? Okay, so if you click on an item, say for example, this one here, you can edit it if you have the ability to manage. So
Carmen?
Yeah. Sure.
Hey, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah.
How do I get to this page actually?
So the whole back end or just this page?
I guess the whole back end.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not able to get in either.
Yeah, I can't really get in, sorry.
Okay, so the way that you get in is you go to the ACE-WIL website and then click on member portal.
Yeah.
And then you should be able to log in. So have you logged in up this way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, but when you, okay, so then once you've logged in, how about clicking on view member documents? Do you have that option?
For myself, I don't have that option. I only have view member directory.
Yeah, me too.
Same here,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay. So last week we had created these new ACE-WIL roles to try to streamline things, and not all the functionality moved over as expected. So I have a support ticket in with Pathwise to fix this, but obviously they haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. But normally you would just log in using the member portal. So when you land on a page, like any page at all, do you have these little edit buttons on the side?
No.
Let's see.
I do, but when I press it, it just brings me to my profile. Is that?
And you don't see anything on the side?
No, so when I press it, it just brings me back to my profile. It like refreshes the page.
Yeah, same with
Okay.
Gen for myself.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, then sorry, guys. There's some issues here with the roles that we have to get resolved. Okay, so I will kind of forge ahead then with the demo, and then we'll work to resolve the issue about you guys getting logged in. Okay, so everything begins with entering things into the resource library, which is not this tab. I should probably bookmark this somewhere in the documentation, but all the resources are added into the hub using this submit a resource form. So, I mean, you can try to navigate here now that you've logged in. I'm not sure that you can see this form, but if someone can check out and let me know whether or not you can see the form.
Yeah, I can see the form.
Yeah, I can see it too.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so now Justin, you had so kindly filled out your project page form, and I thought it would be, rather than having me enter that in, I thought it would be great experience for you to enter that in when the time comes. So that's why you can't see that up on the site yet. I figured once you had privileges, that would be a good thing for you to just practice with. But as I'll just sort of maybe go to this particular, oops, sorry, that's a resource pack. Actually, I think I can only give you an example on a resource pack at this point in time. So as we've sort of chatted about before, the building blocks of the resource hub are these individual resources that can be added in to the resource library. So the resource library is the back end, the resource hub is the front end, and the resources are the individual building blocks. When you see a resource, you can either have just one item associated with the resource, or you can have multiple items associated with the resource. The difference is how you want to group things based on topic, but also the key differentiator is also visibility. So if you need to make some items private to members only, they would have to be loaded in as a separate resource. Just because the visibility setting is on at the resource level. And so what ends up happening for somebody, if they're not logged on, if they try to access something that is for members only, they'll get a prompt to log in as a member, and then they can see the resource. But for someone who's not a member, they'll still see these buttons here. They'll still know that there are resources, but when they click, they can't access. So that's how it's been set up at this point in time. So to add something in, we'll just do a bit of a fake resource here. So this is the actual title of the resource that would show up as the title here on this page. And then add a fake description. The metadata, when people are submitting a resource, they'll have a form to fill out. It'll either be a submit a resource form, it'll be a project page form, or it'll be a launch plan for a resources form, depending on the situation. I think in most situations, it'll just be a simple add a resource form, and in the form itself has this metadata on. We've asked them in the document to be specific rather than selecting all of these things. So we'll just say this is for students. It has to do with engaging with students, and it has to do with internships as a type of WIL. If it's not related to a specific type of WIL, we don't need to check this off, and ideally we don't check all types of WIL. This is just if a special resource has been developed for a particular type of WIL, this is a way to drill in. Otherwise, we assume everything applies to all types of WIL. And you have the option to upload multiple things at once. And the copyright, if you choose other, you can add this in. Maybe it's SFU, for example. And here's where you choose the visibility for public or for members only. Tags, you can just add them, but with commas in between. There's not a lot necessarily of preset tags, but any tags that you add will just help with the search function. And you'll notice as I'm typing, they don't autofill or auto pop or anything like that. So at least if within your own set of resources, try to be consistent with your tags. The tags don't show up on any web pages or anything like that, so they're not visible to anyone. An external URL. This is pretty straightforward. If I could type URL, I'll just grab this one. They have additional information here for authors, publishers, and stuff with an external resource, and you can choose what the resource is. So if it is not necessarily a URL, or it might be a URL that goes to a PDF, you can choose that here. Maybe it's a URL that goes to a video. And then you have an option here to add and remove. So if you click remove, you remove this altogether, but if you click add, it allows you to add another external resource. So this would be handy if you're linking to, say, for example, 5 different websites under one theme for one resource. Upload a resource allows you to put a title of the document, and you can upload whatever type and determine what it is here. Drag and drop, it's pretty straightforward, takes a few seconds to load. I haven't ever added citations myself, mostly because I'm not an academic and I don't really understand all of that stuff. But if for whatever reason you need to add citations, there is an option here. And as you can see, add and remove. So you can keep adding and removing. See, you've got another option here. And then allows you to, say, remove the first one and keep the second one. The video resource, same thing, title of the video. Ideally, we're not, I should change this little subtitle here. Ideally, we're uploading it to the ACE-WIL YouTube channel first, but if you're sharing a video that someone else has created and it lives on their channel, you can add the URL here. It is the actual URL that is in the bar. It's not the shortened URL that you might get through a sharing link with YouTube. So just remember if you're running into any problems. And then when you're done, just click submit. You get a little green bar at the top to say that it was successfully submitted. And I guess you can see here with the little red asterisks is which are the required fields. But for the resource type, you're obviously uploading a resource, so you have to pick one of them. But the details here specifically are not required. So it does allow you to add something in and then go back and edit. So in the back end, where that lives is under Formidable. Formidable is a forms platform, and everything from comments to job postings to our resources are collected in Formidable. So when you first go to entries to see the entry, you'll see they're organized based on the most recent at the top, going backward in order. So these are different post-in opportunities, become a member, forms, resource library things. The one we just worked on is at the top, so that's easy. But if you have to filter, you can filter down and only see what is in the resource library. Once you get in here, though, there's no option to sort by date. So these may be in date order or may not, but just to be aware of that, if you're looking for something for a specific date, you're almost better off doing it prior to filtering. But you can also add search words in here if you're looking for something in here. What did I say? Oh, I think I just used the word fake. So, and now we have our resource. So you can view the resource, but you can also edit the resource. I'm going to go into edit. So it has here all of the information that I put in. It has the documents and everything. Now you'll see here that if you want to add more on, say for example, you created a resource and you want to add more on, then you can absolutely do that at any time. and just click the update button. And if you're looking to see what it looks like, you can right click here and open in a new tab, and you can view what that resource looks like on the page, and you can get the URL for that resource. So if you say, for example, add something into the resource library and you have to add it to a page and you want to you need the exact URL for some reason, this is a one way to find it if you can't find it any other ways. But if we do go into our resource hub, let's go, let's see this. We should be able to go in and do a search and find our new resource. Here's our fake resource. So once it's in, it's in. So that's kind of a quick look at adding resources into the resource library. I do have a how-to video for this specifically in more details, but this gives you a sense of what the building blocks are. So we're going to move on to the projects now. So for all of the projects that are coming in, this is where you add the overview of your project into the project page. We'll just add new here. And whatever title that you put at the very top here is the title that is the what they call the slug for that particular project. So for example, for this project that I did, I put in the full title, and that is what is in the URL, just separated by dashes. So when you are making your project page, just be mindful of what it is that you put in the top. The excerpt, these will ideally, you're either doing them yourselves using the form on how to add a project page, so you can copy and paste things into the excerpt. And you have up to 375 characters, including spaces. So it's really quite short. I'm just going to copy and make this the project name, institution SFU. Oops, probably wants a full name. Oops. I'll just make this easier. Projects, partners. So let's say I was working with the BC Chamber or the Safety Council and Safety Council of BC. I could put this in, there's nothing, whatever you type in here is exactly how it's going to turn up on the page. We are also looking at adding another field similar to partners that would just acknowledge the funders. So that will probably add in. I'll say this is a planned project. Pick a date, it's just a drop down. The end date will be tomorrow. Contact is Carmen. You can add this or not add this. So these are kind of optional fields. If you leave them blank, the field won't show up on the page. If you fill it in, then it will. And then here is where you can add the blocks. So this is where it gets into sort of WordPress functionality, how this works. So I can't remember who has anyone had experience working on the WordPress platform before? No? No, sure has now, yes. So it's actually, once you get used to using WordPress, it's really quite handy because a lot of websites are powered by WordPress, and they're just customized in an extreme way. And so some, like in this case, there will be forms that you can fill out to submit content and add it to the pages. In other situations like this, you'll get access to the back end. Sometimes you have full capabilities. And in the case with ACE-WIL, you can't just build anything and stick it on a page. We have these content blocks that are pre-styled and set up. So you have to choose a block depending on what content it is that you want to show. So we're going to add a block here. And in this case, to make our lives really easy, this is how you add the resources specifically. We're just going to add a single resource today. We'll use, I don't know, let's try a button detail and see what that looks like. And I know my keyword, so I'm just going to say fake. Finding the resources using this drop-down search functionality is where it might be a little bit tricky, because depending on the word that you're using, so say for example, if I use town hall, oops, can't click straight away, town hall, and then you've got your list here of everything that has a keyword of town hall attached. But obviously it's looking in the names and it's not looking in the tags. So this is where it might be tricky finding your resource. So just remember your resource name. But you have other optional blocks that you can do. You can add like a full video. Same thing, you can have a title, you can have the link, the URL link for the video. The video height I just leave as is. Any content would be a caption for the video. Let's see here. You can add an image if you want a full width image. The other big ones that I use are the 2-column freeform and the 3-column freeform. I would not use this 2-column content. I can't get rid of that quite yet. But the 3-column freeform allows you to build kind of like what we did on that students from International Pathways example. So I'll just go back and show that. So this is a 2-column freeform, and what it allows you to do is it allows you to sort of add the heading, add some content at the top, which was this little description here, and then it allows you to actually, sorry, that's incorrect. It's not this description. It begins with this, and there is no heading. So that's an example where you can add a heading and content before your columns, but if you don't, it'll just show the columns. You have options to add these different types of fields. So we're going to add a heading. I'm just going to say a fake heading again. I'm going to add another row, and I'm going to add an image. So when you add an image, it sends you over to the resource library, and you can pick whatever image you want. I'm just going to randomly pick this one. Now we have a center column, so I like to keep things consistently horizontally as much as I can. So I try to make sure the heading and the images and the content are the same length. But we can add anything there. We can add a video, we can add a link, we can add a button. When you add a button, you need to actually know the URL, which is when it comes in handy to know the URL of something that you want to point to specifically. I'm just going to grab this one. And then your link text and your title can be anything. I don't know, to be honest, I haven't really tested to know which one for sure shows up on the page. I'll just maybe use an exclamation mark to differentiate them. Add a link, and I'm going to leave the right column blank for now. So these are the ways that you add additional content to the pages. And on the right bar here is where you add some more metadata. So this is where we say this one in particular we remember was engaging with students. Our audience is students. Type of will was internship. And setting a featured image for the project, that's the image that goes across the top of the page here is the featured image. I'm going to click on the link here, go into the media library, and we have them pre sort of stock of Resource Hub images that are already cropped to be the right dimension. You'll notice on this page, it's very horizontal. And if you don't pick this and crop it wisely, then it can cut off at really bizarre places. Like if it was just a square image of this girl here, it probably would only cut off so you'd see her eyes or her nose or her mouth on the featured page, which we don't want to do. And so we had preset these images here. For example, I'll just pick this person here. I'm going to add that featured image for the project. Okay, so I'm done here. What I've noticed with WordPress and the way that it's set up is that I do not have an option to preview this easily for some reason. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. We'll see if it works today. No. So I'm just going to click publish. All right, now that it's done and published, I can actually click and view what that looks like. So we have our slug up here, which is the title name. We have the title of the page. This is my excerpt, which is the blah, 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 the project information. When you add an institution, and it actually links with that institution's page on the website, the partners, the original project name, status is planned, and the project dates are here, and a contact name is here. So depending on how you fill this information out depends how much shows on the page. And here we have our fake resource that we added to the page. This space here is actually because I have that block sitting in there for a video that I didn't add a link to. And now we have our 3-column format, which has a heading and a picture. The center column is a button, and obviously we can tell which one works because the exclamation mark goes here. And then I left the 3rd column blank. So obviously this is not a very well put together page. I would suggest actually that you put this kind of featured content above the resources, but anyone can really decide to do anything with their page. Before we kind of move on, I just want to sort of note that let's say, okay, here's this video resource. I don't want it anymore. To get rid of it, you click on this little dash here to remove the layout, and then you have to click again, are you sure to remove? And then it's gone. For these little column things here, it's quite handy because you can, within a column, you can drag and drop and change the order, but you can't, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think you can actually reorder the columns. So like I can't drag, I don't know, I can't really drag that and stick it in another column if I change my mind. So there is some flexibility within columns to drag and drop and change your order up. And that might be handy. I'm building out some web pages now, and I've got a heading and I've got a content blurb, and I'm thinking I'll go back later and add an image, but as soon as I add the image, I can just drag it into the position that I want. So your new rows that you add will always add to the bottom, but you can move that up if you want in the order to be whatever order that you want. And then if you decide you want to remove a section, there's a way to remove it on the side. These functionalities with these blocks are the exact same for projects, resource packs, and any page on the ACE-WIL website. So once you kind of get the hang of what the building blocks are and get used to using them, they're the same ones that you would use if you're building out a resource pack. It's the same technique. So the ones that I primarily use is editor. Occasionally I use image because it's not very often that I need a full width image on a page, but it's here if you need it. Feature post is if there's something in the blog that you want to feature on your page, you can feature it using this. Resources is 4 different ways that you can show resources on the page. Slider is an old functionality, and so are the stats. So I don't use these much. Testimonial and quote is a new one that we've designed. I haven't had a chance to use it much. Mostly I'm using the 2 free-form column ones because that allows the most flexibility on the page. And then the video, I think, is something that we'll use more often. And I think for a project, if there's like a 2-minute video that describes you know, an overview of what the project is about might be really nice to have on a project page and feature on a project page. So when you make changes to the page, it doesn't automatically update. So you do have to go in and update. Can't remember where that's been. So I'm just going to go back up to documentation. Oops. Don't know, did it update properly? I'm sure it does. Okay. Now I'm going to leave the page and I'm going to go back up to the documentation. Under the documentation, we actually have sample blocks and layouts is one of the options here. And so these are links to show you what the different content things look like on the page. So if you're ever stuck thinking, oh, how am I going to design, or which block do I want to use, you can go back in here. So under resource packs, we'll just quickly go to the resource packs. I'm going to just edit this one here rather than to create a new one. So it's very similar to the project. You've got your title, which formulates the URL slug. You've got your excerpt, which is the 375 characters, including spaces. And then we have a series of resource blocks. In this case, they have chosen resource single is the first one. And then we have resource multiple, which is in this case, a list. So let's take a look at what this page looks like because it's already been published. So we've got our page title, our excerpt. This is a single resource on its own. And this is a list of multiple resources together. So this means that they're grouped in their own little box, which is an option for you to do. And you can see here, it's the same technique we used before, which is just to pick from the list. And if you want to change the format of this one, say we want tile instead. You do have to be careful with these, but this one in particular, it's very easy to switch between tile and block. So we'll just update. And then I'll refresh the page and I'll show you what that looks like. So then instead of being 3 in a list in a box, you've now got the 3 in tiles. So looking at the different ways that the resources and the content blocks can be used on the page is what gives you the flexibility. And this is what I mean by it's all pre-styled and preset. So the height of the boxes, the length of the boxes, how they all function, you have no control over that or very little control over that unless you run into a problem and the programmers have to reprogram. But the nice thing is you don't have to worry too much about what you're doing in the back end when you're doing it, because you can have the confidence that when it lands on the page, it's going to be appropriately styled. I'm just going to move this back to list because I like that better. Okay, so the final thing that you may end up wanting to do as a resource manager is to change what is on the main resource hub page. Because we have our little blurb and the search at the top, but what shows in these resource packs and which 4 projects show here and which topics that show here are all manually controlled. So as someone overall, and this might be you, Nashir, that you're looking at this and refreshing it from time to time, because ideally it's not the same thing sitting here forever. And when people come to take a look, they can look at something different. So that is one of our pages. And you can search for the page resource. We'll just search for the page. And we'll edit the resource hub page. So let's take a look at that main resource hub page. It's different than the others in that it doesn't have a featured image across the top, and that's so that we can get into the resources as quickly as possible on the view on the page. And there's lots of, you know, visuals on the page anyway, so we aren't adding a featured image at the top. Sometimes you'll see the option to add an image to a page over here as a featured image. Sometimes it becomes part of this hero section, and it's possible to add an image here. Just depends on when the page was built and how it was designed. Unfortunately, it's not super consistent. This is the description that comes at the top, and it can be updated from time to time. Within these content blocks, you do have this full functionality to add links, add images, and change the style of it. This particular heading, I've made a heading 4, and you can see in those sample documents what those various headings look like on the page when you're in building. But just to let you know that any of these, like editor blocks or content blocks, you have this bar and you have the built-in heading styles that you can use. But unfortunately, what shows in the back end isn't exactly what's going to show in the front end. So just be mindful of that when you're picking it. When you get the order of these is different than on the actual page. It shows projects first. But let's say that I wanted to go in and add another project. It will look at all the projects that have been added and only show you those. So Hannah must have created this one for Impact 2020. So let's add that in as a project. And then here you can place them. The main resource pack is the one that's horizontal on the page. This is the main one. And then you have 1, 2, and 3. So you can choose whatever ones that you want to feature in that section. And with the resource topics, it will only give you the option of the way that the metadata has been attached to individual resources. So let's say we wanted to have something that was, I think we already have engaging with students. So I don't think I have a lot of stuff in here for some of these things, so I'm just gonna not mess with that right now. But at least we can see that we've now added the Impact 2020 Story Showcase thing to the main page of the Resource Hub. And so same thing, update. Do a refresh. Here's our Impact 2020 Story Showcase. Let's go check out, see what she's been busy doing. She's got a great banner, heading, project information. Oh, look at that. So here's her creative way of doing a 3-column format. She's got an image and text and another image on the other side, which is kind of fun. This would be like a content block, an editorial with no heading is this block here. And then she's got her resources, which this one has, okay, so this has a link so that you can click on the button right away. This is a particular style of resource with a button built in, or you can have the read more, which goes to the resources page with the button there. So that, there's lots of different options on how this can be set up on the page. So thank you, Hannah, for giving us a nice example here to take a look at. Okay, so that was a pretty speedy walkthrough of adding the resource, adding the project page, building out a project page. The resource pack is the same kind of idea as the project, except for you're selecting from resources that could come from multiple different types of projects. And we've talked about going into the back end into Formidable and editing the individual entries. You can do that at any time. We've talked about refreshing the main Resource Hub page. So I think we've covered pretty much everything that you need to be aware of. Oh yeah, and we talked about the documentation where you can see some different samples of things and keep track. Is there anything that Oh, I'm going to say one more thing. At the bottom of these pages, there's SEO stuff that I haven't spent a lot of time. Some of that's automated, but you can see how many times I've gone in and made micro edits to the page. So don't be afraid of that. Don't feel that you have to do everything all at once and then hit update. Sometimes I just test it. I'll see what a particular button looks like, or see what it looks like as a link as opposed to a button, and I don't like it, and then I'll switch it back, and then I'll just update and refresh and view it on the other side. So yeah, don't be worried about making a whole lot of revisions to the pages here. It's probably safer to do micro changes so that you can keep track of things. Sometimes when you delete a block, if you delete it accidentally, it's gone, and then you have to rebuild the whole thing. So it's nice to just make small changes where you can. Okay, that was my last little point I kind of wanted to make about process. But does anyone have any specific questions, or would you like to see anything in particular again?
Thank you, Carmen, for this very nice introduction. I actually wanted to ask a question about the images. You mentioned that those images has to be cut out in a very specific way to be able to center it in the web page itself. So is there any particular dimensions which we need to take care of, or any resolution, or is it more like a trial and error method?
We know the exact dimensions for the image. Let me see if we have that in the documentation. No, not specifically. I have it in a different spot. Oh, but it does go into here. So when you are creating an image for the banner, it needs to be this dimension. I'll just edit this. Pixels. So yeah, so you go in and you can, the initial crop going in is in pixels. Let me just go into I'll update this quickly. So in the back end, you should all have, I don't know if you have access to this Gen, but I know that the others do. But if you go into volunteer tools and how-to documents, we have some other goodies in here. So one of them is to create a banner image in MailPoet, but here's another one, make a blog image the correct size. Hannah built this how-to document. So yeah, this is when you don't pick the right image, what ends up happening on the page. And so ideally you go in and create it to these particular dimensions. And then she has a step-by-step guide on how you would use Pixlr to do that if you don't have Photoshop or some other photo editing tool. And Pixlr is free. I don't even think you need to set up an account. But she goes through various examples of how to do that. And if you've got a nice crop that you like, but you've got blank space on the side, she even talks about how you go in and do a sample of a particular color and then use that to fill out the sides. So you get the full width on the post. Sometimes we're really stuck with the images that we get in. They're never going to be a nice horizontal crop like we need for the banner. And then she's loaded it in the page and given an example of a thumbnail. So ideally, you're trying to get images where that middle third is what it is that you're looking for, but you may end up needing to crop. Another thing that's in the help documentation is custom, oh, sorry, I was on that page, custom thumbnail sizes. Sometimes, for example, like this blog image here with the woman, she's just a little bit too far off on the side, and it would be nice to get her in size a little bit. This tells you how to actually go in and do that. So I'll just experiment with this. So when you go into the media library, select the image, and when you scroll down here on the very far side, you click on crop thumbnail, and it gives you your full original image here, and then it shows you the different options for the different size thumbnails and how they will look on the website. So if, for example, I wanted to customize this particular one, I don't know why it's so wide on my screen. Oh, I guess because it's quite wide for real. Let's see. I think the one we have most trouble with is the 350 by 250. This one here we'll pick. So we're going to crop the image. Sorry, this image is really huge, so it's a bit awkward to look at like on screen. So we're going to crop. And let's say we want to crop in on this group here. You can choose your aspect ratio, 350, oops, sorry, 350 by 250. And I think that keeps your ratio accurate, even though it might be slightly larger in size. And then you would click edit image. And then for thumbnails, it would give you this section instead of what it might have done automatically, this one, for example. So there are ways to custom crop what the thumbnails look like on the page. And the thumbnails show up, say, for example, we're in this particular resource pack, and it has the resources that it recommends at the bottom. It's these thumbnails. So these are the ones with the custom crop if you don't like how it ends up showing up in the view.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, there's apparently a link that shows this in action. So, okay. Any other questions at this point?
Also, when we are updating this web page, is the page still live for other members or anyone who visits the site?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
will that create an issue during the editing process, or what happens?
Because you are live, it can create a bit of an issue, but I don't really have an easy workaround for that. But my recommendation is that you make sure that you're working off of a form and have had any conversations with people or roughly designed what you want the page to look like before you start building it, so that you are as far along as you possibly can be. The good news is that the odds of somebody searching for that exact thing at that moment, like fake, and seeing our fake resource in the resource hub, are pretty slim. But that does remind me that I need to go in and clean up and remove all of that. So maybe we'll do that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's really no other way that you can deal with that. So here I'm going to delete my fake resource. It's pretty easy. You just roll over it and the little menu pops up. I'm going to delete. So yeah, that's why it's nice to have the forms filled out as much as possible and the concept. So, and that's why I think it makes sense to start almost from the bottom and build up. So start with the individual resources, put all those in, make sure you're happy with those, then build a project page and add the resources to it. Or maybe you have a project and it doesn't have any resources yet. That's fine. Just build out the bare bones of the project, put it in, and then you can continue to work with those people to add more information to the individual project. Once you have the project and the resources, then you can look at building a resource pack. And once you're comfortable with how those are all developed, then you can do the top level featuring it on the actual page. So here I am in the projects. It doesn't say delete, it says trash. I'm gonna trash my fake project. So it's gone. So the good news is it's gone. The bad news is that if you do that accidentally, it's gone. Yeah. So when I'm building, like I'm refreshing a lot of the pages on the ACE-WIL website, I use that same technique. I start with the bottom pages, the ones that are the most remote, and then I build up to the top level pages. And then once I'm happy with the top level pages, then I will update the menus and the navigation to show those. But we don't get a ton of traffic. So at this point, the odds of somebody stumbling across your thing mid-progress are fairly slim. And so it does give you a little breathing room to not be too worried about having a work in progress. And I guess if you're really nervous about that, you could in the description say this page is under construction, but then you wouldn't be able to put the full excerpt in for that project. So that could be a workaround.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I had a question. So at the very beginning, when you were doing the submit resource thing, so you went on the URL submit-resource over there, and then you were entering the information about the resource as the fake resource.
Yeah.
So that when we actually enter information about an actual project, that information comes from the forms that the project leads are filling out, right?
Yeah.
And do we enter the information on that page, or do the project leads enter it themselves, and then we only go in the back end and edit it further if they require to add more stuff to it?
At this point, I've been asking that the aside from the folks here which have larger projects and lots of resources, I'm asking people to fill out the form, and then we enter it in from the form.
Okay.
So on the Google Drive, we have the sort of ACE-WIL Resource Hub forms for uploads, edits, projects, etc. We have the 3 template documents, which they will either need to, if you give them a link to Google, they'll need to know to make a copy and then save it. But for example, the add a project, we can just open that one up. You've seen this one. So I continue to make tweaks to it so make sure that you get the one from the Google Drive if you're circulating. But it has the fill in the blank and the suggestions. So they fill it all in, and then they just highlight, for example, if they're in progress, they can just highlight that.
Okay.
And that way it's all there. And then it has some example stuff, and then they would go in and submit an actual, they would fill out another form to add the resource to the library. And this one is the name, the description, the tags, the metadata. And then they can recommend, okay, I think this resource belongs with such and such project or such and such resource pack. And there's an option if they feel like it needs to be highlighted on a web page somewhere. So I recommend as much as possible that we have copies of all of these forms. And I have stashed them in this incoming forms. And I've just added loaded in before so that I know that these 2 are loaded in. Hannah obviously went directly and didn't complete a form, which is fine, except we don't really have a record of that original piece. So even like Jen, you're doing your own project, I still would recommend that you fill out a form and load the form into the incoming and then use it from there. And Justin, I haven't put your form in here yet. You still have it. So once we get you the proper permissions, then I suggest you just use that as a reference and then load it in.
Carmen, yeah, kind of speaking onto that point. So I'm wondering what the workflow kind of looks like. So let's say, for example, Paran is a project manager, and then he fills out let's say launch plan for resources document, and then he emails it to you?
At this point, I think I built out a really big process document because someone else was asking about it. I think this may be it. And maybe I need a better title, but this actually, someone else was asking about the process. So I did create a document with process links to folders, links to videos for the different scenarios that people would have, and then tips for some other resources for them to take a look at, including how to get this, these illustrations that I've been using in the site. So this is ideally, I think what the next step is that we need to send, or no, sure, you're going to have to send an email to all of the project leads, not just the ones that are coming up, but all of them. And we can include this document for them so they understand what the process is. And then hopefully, while you're still around, we can get as many of the projects loaded in, even if it's just the project details and the brief description. And then as they complete their projects and have resources to load in, we'll already have the project skeleton to add those resources to. But yeah, I think it does start with, you know, what have they got? Like, have they got a resource? They might just have a resource and no project. Have they got a project and no resources, right? That could be the case too. Maybe they just have an idea of a resource pack and think, oh man, you know what? I think it would be really cool if we put all of blah, blah, blah together. And they might have a recommendation. So in here is Nasher's email address as the contact. So you'll be getting all of those. But I am around until the end of May. So I'm obviously happy to chat and answer questions. And we can, you know, as we're uploading, we'll maybe run into some other issues and we can add to this document. And then the launch plan is only to be used for those that really want to go out and make a big push. So with the Students from International Pathways, you filled this one out, Justin, because we knew we were going to take that out in social media. We knew that we were going to maybe write some articles about that. We knew there was going to be a blog post. But say, for example, somebody else is just doing a project and it's professional development for ACE-WIL members only. That doesn't need a launch plan externally. It just needs to be loaded into the hub and then shared in the newsletter. So it's not as robust. But even in that example, come to think of it, they could probably just fill out a launch plan thing if they're looking for bigger exposure. Some projects, they're going to have a final report and the rest of the information is confidential to their post-secondary institution. They just need to load their project. That's it. Okay. Anything else for anyone? Okay, so what I'll do is I will, once I have the recording for this, I'll load it up into this, I'll probably just load it up into this incoming folder here, which I believe you all have access to, so that you can see, actually, will I load it here or will I not? It probably makes more sense to load it into the volunteer tools and how-to documents, just so that it's not confusing for people that are working on their projects and get into that folder. So I'll load it up under here and then I'll send you guys a link. So, and I'll also load it to our YouTube channel probably.
Carmen, that document which you showed about the project launch and those details, you have mentioned the Google Drive links. So are those accessible by everyone? Because if they click, will they be asked for an access, or it is open to everyone?
It depends on the link that you share. So for this, if we say want to share this at a project, and then you click share, you can choose who can see it.
Okay.
And give them the link.
Yeah. Okay.
or it can be restricted, and then you can decide how that is restricted. But even though we can give them a link so that anyone can see these, just because some people are not, they don't necessarily understand. And so I had shared the actual folder with someone, and they went in and filled out all of our templates with all their project details, and then we had to go in and recreate the blank templates again. So just, you have to be cognizant of the fact that people may not necessarily understand that, and so, or even how to use Google Drive. So that, in that respect, I think it would make more sense to download it and send it to them as a Word doc, and then they can send it back. And then, say, for example, if I were doing that with Justin, I would load it into the incoming folder, and then it would be sitting there. And then anyone who wanted to work on uploading resources could see the ones that were loaded and not loaded, and then could just chip away at the project documents that are in the system.
Okay, thank you.
I think I might want to rename these so they stay at the top. So put a little asterisk here. Okay. All right. Anything else jumping out at folks at this point in time? Okay. So the one piece that we really haven't talked about, and I don't know that we'll really go into that today, is loading videos into the YouTube channel. So in order to do that, you need to have a YouTube account, and then ACE-WIL's YouTube video channel has to give you permission to be able to load content there. So right now it's just Justin and myself, because he had some videos to upload and work on. But once more projects want to add video resources, we do want them to be on our ACE-WIL YouTube channel. And so if anyone has YouTube set up, or you're expecting to add a lot of video for your project, let me know, and we'll go through the process of getting you connected on YouTube so you can upload the videos.
Sounds
All right.
good.
Well, thanks for persevering through all of this.
Thank you, Carmen, for going
Thank
through
you so
all the
much.
It's a lot of work, actually.
I think the nice thing about it that I like is it is creative, in that you have to make creative decisions about how things look visually. But other than that, it's very systematic to me, which I quite like. It's like, okay, I do A, and then I do B, and then I do C, and then I play around with C a little bit and experiment and test to see what I like, and then I move on to the next page. So yeah, I kind of like that. I feel like it's somewhat creative, but it's also very quiet work. And it's really easy to just go step, step, step without having a lot of interruptions, which is why I also like the idea of having the forms, so you get as much of that information as possible. But in the terms of the process, once it's uploaded, then of course it just needs to be checked by various people and then tweaked depending on what it is that they might like to see. So anyway, but I hope it's fun for you guys. I think it's a great skill to be able to understand at least maneuvering around in WordPress, because you never know when that's going to come up again in your work for other sort of projects and other companies and stuff that you're working for. So yeah, hopefully it gives you some new skills. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.